Can you explain about that?
Sure. I spent most of my 20s in prison. I did roughly 9 years. My last 3 years was in the Supermax Penitentiary in Marion, Illinois. I met a brother out of California that was a Crip. He was the first Crip I ever met that treated it like a religion. He would tell me that, he said, brother, when I was on the streets, we didn't even stop for red lights. But we were friends, we spoke every day. And the way we spoke, I was on the top tier, he was on the bottom. So when they would let us out, they would still be in the cells. And when they would let them out, we would be in the cells. So for maybe 2 years, we spoke every day, but we never spoke face to face. Either I was in the cell or he was in the cell. That was our relationship. As my time whittled down, he looked at me one day, he said, you know, brother, you're the first friend I ever had to go home. And, that impacted me because, well, let me say this, the place we were, the average amount of time there was 64 and a half years. People didn't go home. So, just so happened, I was going home and he had never. So, when I did finally, when I was released, I thought about it. I said, man, I'm his first friend to go home. I gotta make sure I do right by him. But it wasn't the normal thing of magazines and money orders and things like that because he was okay. And I just come home, I couldn't give him too much anyway. But he had, as wild as he was, he had a love for black people. So one day I got the idea, it was, in fact, the Million Youth March was coming up. I said, I'm gonna go to the Million Youth March, I'm gonna take pictures, sit in the pictures. And from that, back then it was disposable cameras and things like that. So I would buy disposable cameras and I would just take pictures everywhere I went, send them to him. Time went on, the digital cameras came out. I got a digital camera, same thing. Everywhere I went to take pictures. One day I looked up, I had a bunch of pictures and wanted to do something with it. So I made like a collage with different music I liked and, family pictures and just pictures around New York. And, I kind of enjoyed doing that. Then I did a project for the mosque that I attended, Mosque number 7C in Brooklyn, that was going through relocation. Things had to be fixed up. So from the beginning, I took pictures when everything was torn up and needed work. During the process, then the grand opening, I took pictures and I had access to the video that everybody did. And I did a project, from then to now type thing with music and everything. Eventually, people started kind of like hiring me to edit. And the last brother, a good brother that passed a few years ago, Ahmed Shaheed, and he hired me to edit. And once it was done, he was so pleased with it. When I went to his office to pick up my payment, he played a documentary of the Islam in America amongst black people. And it was a very rare documentary. I'd never seen it before. And the pictures in it and all the things I'd never seen, which for me was a big deal because I like to read and I like to collect pictures and things like that, but I hadn't seen that. And at a certain point, well, not at a certain point, when the documentary got to 1975 and Islam took a different direction, he stopped it because the documentary took a different direction. And he had his hand on the DVD player and he said, brother, do you think you could do something like this, but do it right? And at the time, I had never done anything like that, but I still told him, I said, I've never done anything like that, but I think I could do it. And I went and I called a friend of mine who I met in prison, Brother Johnny, told him about that. He got so excited. He said, what do you need? I said, well, I guess first thing you need is a camera. I didn't have a camera, not a video camera. So he bought a camera, sent it up to New York, never even opened up the box. He just sent it straight to me. Almost as soon as the camera got in my hands, he calls me and he says, "You ever heard of a brother named Victor Moore?" And I hadn't. He said, "No, I haven't." I said, "Who is he?" He said, "Well, he's a brother," and he said he beat Bruce Lee.
Right.
And I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah." He said he beat Chuck Norris. He said he beat all of them. They call him the man that fought them all. Within maybe 2 weeks, I was in Atlanta in a hotel room, 3 o'clock in the morning, interviewing Grandmaster Victor Moore. That was the first interview I'd ever done. And it's on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, ThinMannVentures.
Now, I'm going to introduce someone who's known by many, being reintroduced to some they should have heard of and never heard of. There's a man that you can compare to the Jackie Robinson of baseball, to Jesse Owens of track, to Muhammad Ali of boxing. You can call him, I would say, compared to one of the disciples of Christ, because he could fit the category of all 12 of the disciples he had, with the exception of Judas, because he didn't turn his back on nobody. But when you are the first African-American national champion, it says a lot. But that's still not good enough. When you're the first American world champion, that says a lot, but that's not good enough. When you're the first African-American world champion, it says a lot, but that's not good enough. But when you can say you're the man who was there with all those that say they're the greatest, and you fought them all, and you won, that says it all.
And during that trip, my same friend, Bubba Johnny, told me, he said, "Oh, you know Steve Muhammad lives down here." I didn't even know who Steve Muhammad was. Come to find out, Steve Muhammad is the one that played Jim Kelly's teacher in Enter the Dragon.
Double punching, ready?
And come to find out, Steve Muhammad, or Sabir Muhammad is his name now, is the man that Bruce Lee said had the fastest hands and feet of anybody he'd ever met.
The day that I met Bruce, he was sitting with Chuck Norris, and he asked Chuck, he said, "Who's that guy? Man, he's got extremely fast hands and feet."
That's right.
Come to find out later that Steve Muhammad, Sabir Muhammad, is one of the many black fighters Bruce Lee studied. And which is why we love Bruce Lee, because we see ourselves in him.
He studied black fighters. If Bruce was alive now, he would let you know that, and it was said by Bruce, if you want to learn how to fight, you should study black boxers and black fighters.
And I remember after interviewing brother Steve Muhammad, Sabir Muhammad, I came back up and I showed the footage to my teacher, who was 83 at the time. And when I showed him, and he was talking, brother Muhammad was talking about Bruce Lee studying him and studying Joe Louis and studying Sugar Ray Robinson and studying Muhammad Ali, he hit the table and he said, "I knew it. I knew it." He said, "Don't no Chinese boy move like that."
He had films on me in fighting, and he had a film on me from white belt to brown belt to black belt.
That's right.
So while down there, meeting these two one-of-a-kind martial artists, see, like how people say they don't make them like that anymore. They don't make them like that anymore because they went through a unique time. Because remember, they're talking about doing martial arts during the civil rights era. So you always hear about the bus boycotts and the integrating this store and interracial this and what have you. But these dudes was fighting white people and beating them. So they had a different type of racism they had to deal with. They said they were so good, they would show up, they wouldn't even let them fight for first place. Victor Moore told a story, and it's on my channel on YouTube, where he beat Chuck Norris. And he said that when he beat Chuck Norris, the judges disappeared for 10 minutes. And when they came back out, they made them fight some more. And then they found a way to give it to Chuck Norris.
Wow.
And Chuck Norris came up to him and was like, "No, look, I didn't have nothing to do with that." And he said that he signed the flyer, and it said to Victor Moore, the man that beat me. But it didn't stop there. They said Chuck Norris' wife came behind him and she signed it to Victor Moore, the man that beat my husband.
Wow, that's amazing.
Right, so now, meeting these two individuals, my first thought was, I met them in Georgia. Imagine what's back home in New York. So the idea of doing a project called the GrandMasters of New York, I had that before I even got back to New York. I got that in Atlanta by just beating these two. And I went on a journey, this was almost 15 years ago, where I interviewed some of the top Black martial artists in the 5 boroughs here in New York. And someone said, why New York? New York has a unique history, similar to, I would say, Chicago, Philadelphia, Detroit, the cities. Because when Black people in the 40s began to migrate up north to the cities, it's been said that, so that's the greatest human mass migration outside of natural disasters ever. The amount of Black people that left the South to come up to the North. And this is why the cities got to be so bad, because all of these areas, Bed-Stuy, Brownsville, East New York, that is known to be Black neighborhoods, these were all white neighborhoods before we got here. Harlem was a white neighborhood. They said, so when we came, white people moved out and they built the suburbs. That's how you got Queens and Long Island and all of these different places.
Once upon a time, Newark was a white city. Department stores like Bamberger's and Hanes catered to white shoppers. At the turn of the century, just 3 to 4% of the population was Black. Then in 1910, the Great Migration of Blacks from the South began. As Blacks moved into northern cities like Newark, whites moved out.
When we got here, they ran out. That's how it got so bad.
Just when it couldn't get any worse, came the blackout. For 2 days, more than 7 million people were left in the dark. During that time, 1,600 stores were looted and almost 4,000 people were arrested.
In the 70s and in the 80s and the 60s, because as Black people came into the cities and white people left the cities, so did the resources.
At one time, the Bronx was a thriving community. But towards the end of the 60s, that started to change. Businesses moved out. Crime moved in. People were left with an overwhelming sense of fear and hopelessness.
That's like me, I'm 53 years old. When I came up, I think I heard a minister say that, like a man, a snaggletooth man. Like every once in a while you see a tooth, every once in a while you see a house. Because most of the houses, or a lot of the houses were abandoned, burnt up. You had packs of wild dogs just roaming the streets. It was, you didn't see the police unless you called them. So that was New York, so the crime. If you go look at the old Johnny Carson shows and all of that, when they do their monologue, that's what they would joke about the crime. Yeah, I was in New York, I got mugged.
I'll give you a little case in point to illustrate what I'm talking about. Today, as I'm coming to work, I saw 2 complete strangers in New York City sharing a cab. It was an amazing sight. Yeah, the one guy, he had the wheels and the radio, and the other guy had the seat and the engine. They were just divided up for sharing a cab.
That everybody was known. That's why they made movies like Taxi Driver and all of that about how lawless New York was. Not to mention you had gangs. Right. So in the midst of all of that, we had martial artists. So that means that it's not like you in sunny California or Iowa, where people are just training because they want to train. In New York, you're training people that might get robbed tonight, might get raped tonight, might have a chain or a purse snatched tonight, and you got gang members in your class. But they fought all the time. So a lot of the gang members, it's like a football team. You get that, the first 300-pound dude that they hired in football, he changed football. And now everybody gotta get one. but all you need is one. So you get one gang cat that know how to kick and punch. You know, that means that everybody got to start learning. So a lot of the teachers had gang members that fought all the time. So that means that you can't perpetrate a fraudulent art to them because they're gonna come back and let you know whether it works or not.
That's right.
So the teachers of the different schools they were actually competing with each other over who had the most realistic techniques. So that went on for a period of decades. So that gave New York a unique form of hybrid martial arts. A lot of the movies that we would watch, a lot of the martial arts that you see in the movies from Hollywood, they would come up to New York, train, then go back and make the movies.
I wanted to take a break so that we can show people the clip of the documentary part of the GrandMasters.
All right, great.
We train at Coney Island, the beaches, the ocean. We be lined up all rank and belt, then everybody had to go out into the ocean, water up to here.
We trained in snow rather than waiting.
Cold like I saw up in the Bronx. Man, I was this man is crazy.
Oh boy.
You don't see them doing that anymore. But it toughen your body up.
Oh, that was painful. Because when you fight, you gotta be able to take pain. I got a sponsor, my bro called me in the eye. I was like, oh, wait a minute. God said, real fight, you can't be, wait a minute. I said, you right, finish the fight.
If you don't block, punch him in the mouth. Do not apologize.
I learned how to do the side kick and execute my kick. I would hold my leg up in the air for minutes and minutes and minutes of time until I developed myself.
Spot was some of the best heavyweight champions in the world from the age of 19, 20.
And when you stand in front of me at that time, you stood in front of me. Now, what are you gonna do? Because I was for real. And you would know that back at that time.
Who you are, what you wear that rank on your belt. You have that belt, you better make sure you know how to fight.